This is Iryna Kuchma. Many of you will, in all likelihood, be very familiar with Iryna's work from her years of excellent efforts on behalf of open access and open science in 60 different countries across Asia, Africa, and Europe. Since 2008, Iryna has been running the EIFL Open Access Programme and sits on numerous boards and advisory committees, and has won an Electronic Publishing Trust for Development Annual Award in 2013 in recognition of these incredible efforts in the furtherance of open access to scholarly publications in developing and emerging countries. Iryna works with EIFL, the Electronic Information for Libraries nonprofit organization, and in partnership with EIFL and WACRAN, which is the West and Central African Research and Education Network, AGEL has recently started a collaboration for the sustainable open access publishing of diamond scholarly journal publishing within the African continent. So this early webinar is one of our initial public interventions and services and conversations to start talking about what exactly is diamond open access publishing and why it is important. So with our huge thanks to Iryna for giving us her time today, I now hand the floor over to you to take us forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sue, and very happy to see everyone. Thanks a lot for joining us today, and I hope we'll have an interesting conversation. Let me share my slides, and I hope I wouldn't run into any issues with that. Just a second. So I think you'll see my slides, right? And I think you have my second slide, which says Collaboration for Sustainable Open Access Publishing in Africa, right? Could you please confirm it?
We can see the first slide currently, I think.
What is Diamond Open Access? Or
yes, yes.
Yes, the other notes. Just give me a second.
Sure thing.
I don't know what's happening with. Maybe I'll share mine.
While Iryna is sorting out her slides, can I just ask everybody that has joined us to ensure that, except the hosts, to ensure that their cameras are off. We find that a lot of people running cameras tends to affect the stability of the call. So if everyone can just turn their cameras off, except for Iryna currently. Sorry, floor is yours.
Thank you. Do you see a slide which says supporting and strengthening no-fee open access publishing?
Yes.
So that's a context of our today's discussion, because that's a meaning of Diamond Open Access. So today we'll be talking about journals that are not charging any article submission, processing, or any other charges to authors. And obviously they're not charging anything to readers as well, because they are open access journals. And I hope that now you can see my next slide, which says DMS survey results, right? Do you see my slides advancing?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So that's another context in which I'll be speaking today. The first context is a project which, as you mentioned, where EIFL, AGEL, and WACRAN collaborate on strengthening Diamond Open Access publishing in Africa. And EIFL is also involved in a European project which supports diamond open access. So we'll also mention some examples from Europe, how diamond open access develops there and how it is supported. That's a screenshot from a survey that the AMAS project conducted in the European research area, which includes Europe and North African countries. And it looked into how diamond open access journals operate, because obviously if they're not charging any fees from authors, they need to have other funding sources. And over 50% of diamond open access publishers in Europe say that they rely on fixed and permanent funding from an organization that set up this journal.
Hi, Iryna. Sorry, I'm just going to bother you quickly. Your slides don't seem to be moving on for us.
I don't know what's wrong with my Google Meet today.
It's also in the slideshow is in presentation mode, so perhaps that's why the slides aren't advancing, but it could be a Google Meet technical issue. Sorry, everybody, please bear with us for these minor technical issues. This is the first time we're using Google Meet as a platform, so we're on a learning curve just like everybody else. Thank you for your patience.
Let me maybe try to share my entire screen.
I have found that the switch from Google Meets from Zoom to Google Meets has been largely the same, but there are a few wrinkles that are new to us. Right, I think we are making progress.
Do you see my first slide?
Yes,
What
we
is
can
diamond
see.
open access? Do you see my second slide, collaboration for sustainable open access publishing? Yeah, so let's hope that it works, and you see my slides advancing, right?
Yes, thank you, Iryna. Do continue.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Thank you very much. That's the slide that I was talking about. Diamond open access in the European context, where over half of diamond open access publishers rely on fixed and permanent institutional support, which is wonderful, and it would be great to see that happening in Africa as well. And then 20% rely on periodically negotiated funding from their institution. And this reliance is really high. So if an institution stops supporting, then it would really have an impact on operations. 31% of diamond open access publishers in Europe who responded to the AMAS survey rely on getting revenues from selling print copies. And we know that there are issues related with that, because you need money to print copies in order to be able to sell them and then get revenues. And 70% of those who responded to the survey said that they would like to collaborate with other diamond open access publishers in the areas of IT services, production services, training, good practice advice, and collaboration is also a topic that I would like to discuss today. And Europe is similar to Africa in a way that, unfortunately, many editors of diamond open access journals are unpaid for this work. and dependent on institutional support, which comes as monetary support, but also in-kind support. For example, an institution might support staff involved in journal publishing or support some services. What's really good about European situation with Diamond Open Access, and it would be good to see more of that in Africa, is that many Diamond Open Access publishers rely on government funding. And one of our African project goal is to make sure that governments in Africa also supporting Diamond Open Access. What's also interesting, funding from another report that this European project produced, which is about sustainability of Diamond Open Access publishing in Europe, that when we talk about sustainability of Diamond Open Access publishing, financial sustainability is not so important as personal sustainability, because personal is really central to a Diamond Open Access publisher. And it's a little bit hard to assess this kind of contribution because it's often considered voluntary, in kind, or if a person editing a journal, managing a journal is paid, and usually the person is paid not for the journal-related work, but specific tasks which are related to institutional developments. And there is this constant need of journal editors to negotiate with a host institution for what and how they are paid, what kind of in-kind contributions they are getting. So as you see, this picture in Europe is not so much different from picture in Africa. Another observation from this European sustainability report is that infrastructures for publishing Diamond Open Access journals play a crucial role. Diamond hosting platforms, software like Agile in Africa. And one of the ways to support sustainability of Diamond Open Access publishing in Europe is to support this kind of European platforms that would help small and medium-sized publishers to run their journal operations. And these are some of recommendations concerning sustainability of open access publishing in Europe. And I think many of them are really relevant to our today's African discussion, because it's really vital that universities, libraries, research, and other public institutions continue to support Diamond Open Access publishing. It's important to have permanent government funding, including funding from national research funders, and this kind of funding should support local initiatives, but they should be also able to support some initiatives that go across borders and benefit more than one country. And if there is no governmental funding in line with national policies, and international funding should be available to those who struggle with their national funding. And then there is a role for national policymakers, public institutions, research funders to think how they could strategically support Diamond Open Access current services, and also maybe developing new services and new operations. And what's really important, that this kind of funding is not a short term, but it's really recurring and longer term funding. In case this kind of funding comes as projects, time-limited grants, then administrative burden should be as small as possible, because if it's really hard to manage grants, then journal editors will have to use the time they should have used for managing journals. They will have to use it for managing grants, and it shouldn't be like that. And then there is a role for local, regional, national, international funders to get together and support Diamond on the global scale. And also very important recommendation is that all the work that is done by Diamond Open Access publishers should really be rewarded, recognized and rewarded in their institutions and also in their countries. And I really like this quote from the report at the bottom of my slide, which says that sustainability cannot be considered at the level of the individual institution alone. It's really a conversation that we should have on the national level and also continental level, international level, because it's really about setting up an ecosystem of Diamond Open Access publishing. I would also like to show one more European slide, two more European slides, and then switch to our African discussion. This project also hosted a meeting. European University Association brought together leaders from European universities to think how universities could support Diamond Open Access. And they were asked to explain why they are supporting Diamond, why an institution is supporting Diamond Open Access. And you see some of their answers. So they said that they, as a university, support Diamond Open Access because it's part of institutions' strategic support to open science and open access. It's also an opportunity to increase visibility and accessibility of research outputs produced by the institution. Then it's part of institutional commitment to promote greater transparency and equity in scholarly publishing. An institution is really concerned over the monopolistic practices of traditional commercial publishers, and by supporting Diamond, they really supporting equitable open access publishing. Then some said that they are supporting Diamond Open Access Publishing because there is a demand from faculty members and researchers within institution. Then there are incentives for Diamond Open Access Publishing from national funding agencies, and it's also a way to support earlier career researchers by providing them with publishing avenues that are friendly to them. So I think these arguments are really interesting, and it would be good to hear African institutional leaders also following this example. And then these institutional leaders who attended this European workshop, they mentioned that Diamond Open Access Publishing presents the following opportunities. It really increases visibility and accessibility. It is a scholar-led model. Diamond Open Access promotes equity, openness, and science as public good. It's cost-effective. if we compare with agreements with for-profit publishers, and then it's a way to foster interdisciplinarity. And I think these arguments are also useful for our African discussion about Diamond Open Access. If we look at the global scale, how many journals are there that are open access and don't charge any submission, processing, or any other fees to authors? Out of 20,444 journals indexed in the Directory of Open Access Journals, 13,575 journals don't charge article processing charges, and I think that's a large number. So you see that over a half open access journals are actually Diamond Open Access journals. Moving back to Africa, so you mentioned that we launched a project to support Diamond Open Access in Africa, and we asked editors of Diamond Open Access journals and also institutions running platforms for Diamond Open Access journals to tell us about their operations and needs and how we could support Diamond Open Access publishing in Africa. And we also collected 21 country-level overviews what's happening with Diamond Open Access in Africa. So we would like to thank everyone who responded to this call for consultation. If you are one of those people, thank you so much to you. And based on that, we are launching a call for funding in the end of this month. And what we observed from this landscape study of Diamond Open Access publishing, we managed to identify at least 1,200 Diamond Open Access journals in Africa. And what we see that most of those journals are relatively small. They publish up to 20 articles. And those that publish between 11 and 20 articles are the most numerous. So if you are a Diamond Open Access journal, and if that's the scale of your operation, then you're not alone. You're really similar to other Diamond Open Access publishers. And these are the countries that responded to our consultation. So it's not a representative sample for the whole Africa, but it's what's happening in these countries that you see on my slide. Like I showed in Europe, also in Africa, about 60% rely on volunteer work, either fully or partially. And 1/3 have a dedicated unit in the institution responsible for publishing with employed staff, but many still rely on volunteer work. And what was also interesting that those journals that have small teams between 2 and 5 members, or large teams, more than 30 team members, they usually rely fully and partially on volunteer work. If it's a mid-size operation, then they receive some support from the institution. 45% of our respondents in Africa have institutional funding to run Diamond Open Access journal, and this funding from 25% is permanent, and it would be great to see this kind of permanent funding for every Diamond Open Access publisher. And then for another 25%, it's a funding that they need to negotiate periodically with a host institution. I think it would be interesting to have a look at this slide that shows what are other funding sources mentioned by African Diamond Open Access publishers, and maybe if you are publishing a Diamond Open Access journal and if you have a funding source that is not listed on that grant, maybe write that in a chat, or I hope we'll have a discussion a bit later on. What are your funding sources? And some of these funding sources are encouraging, but then some are really depressing, like personal money, because it shouldn't be the way, and that's the reason why we're running this project, to make sure that you are not investing your own money into publishing scholarly open access Diamond journal. Institutions also provide in-kind support to African Diamond Open Access journals. So usually it's IT support, either general services like internet, email, or specific services when an institution provides a platform to publish a journal or a website, and then allows using facilities and premises for a journal, and in many cases this kind of in-kind support is really multiple. And then I also listed some other types of in-kind support that was mentioned by African Diamond Open Access publishers, that in some cases it's additional pay as an incentive for journal editor and editorial team. In other cases, they have donor support, or grants, or some assistance with quality management. Plagiarism checking service could be provided by an institution, and then some stipends. When I was speaking about European context, I mentioned that recognition and incentives is important, and we also asked in our African consultation whether any incentives exist for publishers of Diamond Open Access journals in Africa. And it was interesting to see that almost 1/4 said that they do have some incentives. So, for example, if you edit in a journal, then you are getting additional points at evaluation or promotion in your institution. Some editors receive allowances, bonuses, honoraria, tokens of appreciation. Some just receive internet data packages. Some get reduction in regular working hours, or less teaching hours, or less institutional administrative work. And some gain additional visibility. So institution is really promoting what a journal editor is doing. And if you don't have this kind of incentives yet in your institution, it would be good to talk to you and support you in advocating for this case with your institutional leadership. We also had a question about sustainability, and it was interesting to see that 40% of those who responded said that they are either stable or very stable financially, and then also almost 40% said that they are unstable or very unstable. So it really varies with different Diamond Open Access publishers. Our project is called Collaborations, and of course we also asked about existing collaborations or willingness to collaborate, and we were happy to see that majority said that they would like to collaborate with other Diamond Open Access publishers. For example, they would like to collaborate on training, support advice on publishing policies and practices, collaborate on IT services, on production, communication, editorial services, and then administrative, legal, and financial services. So I think there is a room here to work better with each other, and EIFL is already providing many of these services. So EIFL is an excellent example of collaboration platform. But we could also talk more about working together on more training, more support, more advice. And this is a major part of my talk, because hopefully in the end of this month, we were launching this call for proposals when a legal entity, for example, a university, research institute, association that is based in Africa and owns an African Diamond Open Access journal, could apply for funding. And this call will be administered by EIFL together with EIFL and Vakran, and it's supported by the Welcome Project. And the idea is to enhance quality and strengthen sustainability of Diamond Open Access publishing in Africa. And an institution could apply with a single Diamond Open Access journal, and we will limit support available up to $20,000. If an institution wants to apply for more than one Diamond Open Access journal that they publish, then they could apply for up to $30,000. And institutions could also apply if they run a platform, for example, OGS platform, that include Diamond Open Access journals. So if an institution is applying for a single journal or multiple journal, this journal should only be Diamond Open Access journals. If an institution is applying to strengthen publishing platform, then this publishing platform could have Diamond Open Access journals, but also those journals that charge article processing charges. But our condition would be that there should be more than one Diamond Open Access journal on such a platform, and then funding could also be up to $30,000. And these are some of the examples of activities that we could support. And this list is just an illustration, and you can suggest any other activities that are useful for you. So we're willing to support editorial management, peer review processes, capacity building of editors, reviewers, authors. If you want to reinforce your research integrity and publication ethics practices, if you want to strengthen some open science practices, for example, introduce data availability statements, maybe experiment with open peer review, it's also possible. Also, if you just want to improve journal production, publishing, infrastructure, technical support, this kind of request will be eligible. Also, if you want to enhance your journal's discoverability, visibility, impact, if you want to engage more with your community, that's also possible. And then any measures to ensure your long-term sustainability, and also any measures to develop strategic partnerships, how collaborations with other maybe journals, libraries, institutions, infrastructures could help you in publishing your journal and also promoting your journal. What is really important, and it's really, we had very lengthy discussions about that, and we came up with this checklist, because if you want to receive funding from us, then your journal should comply with 12 eligibility criteria that I will describe now. So it's important for us that you already have an ISSN or EISSN, and then it's clearly displayed on your journal website, and we can check it in the ISSN registry. It's also important that you publish at least 7 articles a year in 22 and in 23. It's also important for us that you have a regular schedule of publication, and we understand that there might be some delays, and if you have some delays, it's okay. It's you could still apply, but this requirement number 2 is still relevant, that you have to publish at least 7 articles in 22 and in 2023. We also ask you to make sure that all information that you have on your journal website is up to date, that you list your current editorial board members, policies, all the issues that you published really there. Then it's important that you don't charge any fees to authors or readers. Then that your journal website includes information about your journal's mission, journal mission statement, your aims and scope, in which languages you accept manuscripts, and then we will only support scholarly journals. So unfortunately, we won't be able to support journals that publish non-scholarly content. Then it's important that you have an editorial board, and editorial board members are from different institutions. So your journal won't be eligible if you only have editorial board members from one institution. And it's also important for us that your editorial board members are really listed on your website with names, functions, roles, affiliations. And then you can only apply if you have an independent peer review by at least 2 peer reviewers, because we want to, in this round of support, we want to support strong quality open access journals. We also ask you to have clear and detailed author guidelines. So for example, an explanation what type of manuscripts you will consider, which style guide you expect from authors, including references style, and then information how an author could submit an article. And then a journal should have a URL, so it should be a link where we can access your journal. And then the last requirement is that a journal should be Diamond Open Access journal, shouldn't be charging any fees starting from 22, and should be operational at the time of application. And we realize that maybe not every journal will be able to comply with these requirements, and next year we will repeat the call for funding, and we really have commitment to work with you to make sure that you comply with these 12 requirements that I listed. So unfortunately, I can't provide more details about this call at this point yet, because we're still finalizing everything, but please keep an eye on EIFL website, EIFL's website, and we will notify you when this call is launched. We're aiming for the 29th of April, if everything goes well. And thank you, and I'll be happy to answer your questions or hear your thoughts.
Right, thank you so much, Iryna. That was absolutely fascinating, and I think it has given everybody a lot of food for thought. Just a reminder, please pop your questions into the Q&A box. We have a question from Professor Ruth Onyongo of the African Journal of Food, Agriculture, Nutrition and Development. And this one's definitely for Iryna. And Professor asks, is it possible to encourage European organizations to partner with us in Africa and even assist with capacity building and funding? I will open this to Iryna and anybody else from AGIL who feels that they can contribute to that.
Thanks a lot, Professor Ruth, for this question. Yes, that's another project that we wrote together with partners in Europe and in Latin America, because I think we can also learn a lot from Latin America, because in Latin America, 95% of scholarly journals are Diamond Open Access journals. We applied for funding from the European Commission, and we should hear the results maybe within 5 to 6 months. And AGIL is also part of this project. So I hope if everything goes well, there will be money to make sure that this kind of partnerships are set up, including capacity building, mentoring, knowledge sharing, and European partners also want to learn a lot from you, because everyone admires your creativity and the way how you run your journals. So there will be a lot to learn and share with each other. If we don't get this funding, we still have commitment to do it maybe on a smaller scale. So we'll make sure that this is happening. And also maybe one thing to mention is that within our African project, we plan to set up a community, African community of Diamond Open Access publishers, and a similar European community is being set up. So we'll also make sure that these communities in Europe and in Africa talk to each other. They have a common forum space where they can share the developments, ask questions. So that's also something coming up later this year. Thanks for your question, and I'm glad that there is a need for that.
We have another question from Paul Amani of Mzumba University, Morogoro, Tanzania, and he asks, can you give a bit more explanation about number 9, assuming that's point 9 in the presentation, and if a journal with pages embedded in their institutions are disqualified?
They're not disqualified as long as there is a link. So for example, it's your Mzumba University ACTZ/journal of I don't know, agriculture, or so as long as there is a URL that we can click and get to your journal, it's fine. But in some cases we see journals hidden deeply down. So for example, a university would have a website which says research, and then a journal will be somewhere among research activities, conferences, journal, seminars, workshops, etc. So in these cases, we don't consider that a direct link to the journal. So I hope that answers your question.
We have a related question from Konka Bimalingaswara of the Momona Ethiopian Journal of Science. Can journals use the AGIL URL for this?
Yes, of course. As long as there is a link, we can click and see a journal.
Amazing. Right, we have a question from the AGIL Executive Director, Susan Murray, who says, apart from no fees of any kind charged to authors and no subscriptions charged by Diamond Open Access journals, are there any other aspects of the internationally agreed definition of Diamond OA that we all need to be aware of? For example, publishing entity should be a non-profit?
That's discussion about definitions is really is always hard. so far, what we came up with in the European context in Diamas, and also with our African context, that as long as no fees are charged to authors and readers, it's a Diamond Open Access journal. It's also a reality that most Diamond Open Access journals are published by public non-for-profit institutions. And that's good, because it's Diamond Open Access promotes public good, and it's also a mission of non-for-profit institutions. With our call for funding, we decided that we will be supporting universities, research institutes, associations, government agencies, because in some cases government agencies are publishing journals, and non-for-profits. We probably won't be supporting private companies running Diamond Open Access journals, but it's still under discussion, and we haven't seen examples of Diamond Open Access journals in Africa which are published by private entities. And just to be clear, private universities will be eligible, because they are research performing institutions. So if it's a private university, it shouldn't stop you from applying for this call for funding. But if it's a consultancy company, which is a private company, then probably we won't be supporting it.
Right, thank you for that very comprehensive answer. We have another question from Utah David. Journals that charge article processing fees, are they eligible for the DOAJ? Yes, they are. In our case, it is the fee paid for accepted manuscripts that we use to run the journal, since we don't have funding. Okay, yes, Iryna has answered that question. David, you are indeed eligible. And I am going to make this my last call for questions. If you have a burning question that cannot wait a second longer, ask it now. We are coming up at 5 minutes to 12 noon Central African time, South African Standard Time. Yes, last call for questions.
Trust non-profits would be eligible. Yes, thank you. So maybe a comment about journals charging article processing charges. Please don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that this business model is not the right business model to follow, because we also acknowledge that a journal needs funding. And if this funding doesn't come from an institution, from government, from donors, then this money should come from somewhere. And then a journal has to charge article processing charges. And in many cases, these article processing charges are really small, and they are paid for example, DOIs or some other services. And that's also another activity that AGIL will be running in our project. We'll see how we can help journals flip from charging article processing charges to being Diamond if funding sources are secured. So that's also something that we'll explore together with you, maybe starting from October this year and throughout the project, because we realize that you have to charge if you don't have money, and by no means I'm criticizing you for doing that.
A question from Dr. Wanyenda Leonard Chilimo. Must the journal be on a journal management platform like OJS to qualify?
Not really. So it could be on any platform, as long as articles could be accessed. We had a long discussion, should we require a separate landing page for an article? And we realized that it would be a too high requirement. But if you are such a journal, and if you are applying for our funding, please think about using this funding to set up your journal management platform, or consider joining AGIL and using their journal management platform, because it would really make your life easier as a journal.
Right. I think we might have one last question. Dr. Mary Nkechi Okadigwe from the Unizik Journal of Arts and Humanities. Did you have a question, or was that not?
Oh, all right.
Oh.
Good morning. No, I don't have any question, just a wave of greetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. If there are no further questions, it is 11:58, and I think that we will more than likely see Iryna again. She is a longtime friend of AGEL and our ecosystem, and so we are thrilled that she joined us today. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Kylie, for inviting me.
Yeah. Thank you to everybody that joined us as well. We had a pretty good turnout. We are thrilled. As I said at the beginning, we will be uploading this to AGEL, to our YouTube page, rather. Sorry, not to AGEL, to the AGEL's YouTube page. Kate has already put the link in the chat. You can also find us just by searching YouTube. So this will be shared if anybody you know would like to attend and couldn't. Yeah, so I think that brings us to the end of AGEL's first webinar for 2024. I will ask my colleagues, am I forgetting anything at this stage? Excellent. It doesn't appear that I am. Right. Thank you so much, everybody, and have an excellent day further. Goodbye. I'm going to end the call now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great day.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.